Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are so excited that you are joining us today. First, 5 perspectives for more strategic meeting planning. I think that this is such a great topic, and obviously quite a few of you do too, so thank you for joining us. So just some general housekeeping before we get started. Shimo will be monitoring our Q&A board, and our panelists are going to be asking you some questions throughout our webinar, so please get involved and enter your responses there. We will also be running a survey at the end of our webinar as you log off, and we hope you'll take just a minute to answer some questions for us. We would really like to welcome our panelists, and I am just tickled, if you will, to introduce two pretty vivacious gentlemen. First, Jeff Hurt. He is the Executive Vice President of Education and Engagement with Velvet Chainsaw Consulting. And Jeff has a background in nonprofit and hospitality arena for more than 20 years in education and events. And he has planned meetings varying in size from 25 to 35,000. So currently he serves as I said, EVP of Education and Engagement for Velvet Chainsaw, and he blogs for Velvet Chainsaw's Mid-Course Corrections about meetings, education, and social media. So Jeff, we're really excited to get your 5 perspectives today, and thank you for being so generous with your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
And Jeff is joined by our own industry Representative Michael Tarr from the very exciting Choose Chicago. So Mike is the Vice President of Association Sales for Choose Chicago. He's been there since May of 2011, and he also brings a wealth of experience from the hospitality industry, having served both at the Hawaii Convention and Visitors Bureau and a background with Westin Hotels and Resorts. He's an active member of MPI and just an all-around a great representative, we feel, for the CVB industry at large. So, Michael, thank you for joining us from Chicago and representing our industry.
Thank you. Happy to be with all of you.
Great. So, our webinar roadmap, if you will, we will begin with just trying to get our handle around what strategic thinking actually is. We're excited to hear Jeff's 5 perspectives, and then some commentary from Mike about how CVBs and the destinations in which you are planning meetings can help you as they serve really as your destination consultant. It's like buzzwords, Jeff. I feel like everyone in the meetings industry is talking about being more strategic. You see it in articles and webinars, but I'm always wondering if people know exactly what it means. And so from my standpoint, being strategic would first indicate that you need to be aware of the current environment that you operate in, and then you have to identify and plan to really meet your long-term goals. And ultimately, it's about getting your place in the now and then getting beyond the in-the-moment thinking and maybe just the logistics planning in order to really look at a bigger picture of your meeting's success. And meeting planners, as we say, keep being called upon to be more strategic, and I think that CVBs have stepped up to be a resource in destinations. So we look forward to putting these two things together. So Jeff, I'm going to give you the control of the keyboard and mouse and let you take it from there.
Great, thank you. Just to kind of spin off what you just said, when we think about strategy, most of us probably talk about strategy once a year when we do strategic planning. We spend time, maybe 2 or 3 hours or a full day with our teams in strategic planning, create a plan for 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 years, and we don't talk about it again until next year's strategic planning session. So all this talk about strategy, we'll get into what actually is strategic thinking. I want to thank you for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are in the world right now. I always start my presentations with a presenter-attendee agreement. I'd like to know right off the bat, where are you in the world? We'd like for you to type over there in that white box, send it to us. Where are you in the world right now? And tell us your weather. Shima is going to tell us a little bit more about that as those come in. I'm going to go on, Shima, and then I'll stop and give you a chance to tell us more. I'm going to do a presenter-attendee agreement with you. In my presenter-attendee agreement, I want to give you the permission, the law of click. If this presentation doesn't meet your needs, you get a text, an email, a phone call, something more attractive than this presentation. You have my permission and invitation to click right on out of here. In the presenter-attendee agreement, please put those mobile devices on vibrate. And this is a session where texting, typing, social sharing is welcome. The hashtag is ThinkStrategic. If you're going to be using Twitter during this presentation, if you're going to be using hashtag ThinkStrategic, we're going to ask you to tweet into others as you'd have them tweet into you. We're going to ask you to tweet something good before you tweet something bad. And we're going to ask you to seek first understand with this webinar. And we're going to ask that this be a safe place to agree, disagree, ponder, and question. And finally, my presenter-attendee agreement. You get a free pass. You can use this as frequently and as often as you want. If I ask you a question to do something, you don't want to do it, just use your free pass. Shima, I've seen a lot of responses come in. Just give us kind of an overview of what you've seen, what stuck out in your mind.
Well, we are all over the U.S. here, coming in from Cleveland and Indy, where it's a little cloudy, Northern California, St. Louis, cloudy and chilly. I think it's balmy, they're saying, in Chicago at 40, Wisconsin, Albuquerque. So we have folks joining us from all over, even from Little Rock, where it's 40 and cloudy.
Great. Thanks, Shimo. Thanks, everybody, for participating. We're going to ask you to do this a lot as we go through this. So we're going to talk about 5 perspectives to being a more strategic meeting planner. 5 perspectives from being a more strategic meeting planner. The first one is moving from details to relationships. And this is really about that we need to keep our meeting focused on what it really is supposed to be. It's about the people. It's about them connecting. It's about their relationships with one another, our relationships with them. We can get so caught up in the minutia of what I call coffee cups, belly buttons, and heads in beds, food and beverage, and room sets that we forget the real purpose of the meeting, and that it's for and about the people and their connections. So we really need to keep that first. So moving from details, minutia, to a focus on people. Number 2, the perspective is moving and transitioning from function to value. And our jobs as meeting professionals is to deal with the details. And we can get so caught up in that we forget that the space should not define the use. We need to let the ROI, the value, and the attendees' behaviors define the meeting space's use. So much of what we do in our profession is based on efficiency of space. And we need to transition into effectiveness of the meeting. Because when it comes down to it, it really doesn't matter what happens in that meeting. What really matters is what happens after that meeting back in their office. That's where the real ROI is. And how can they remember, retain, and apply what they've heard or been involved in at the meeting? How do we put the emphasis on the end use back in their office? So here's my next question for you. What are some of the ways that we can make sure that we focus on value first and function second? What do you think? We'd like for you to type in that white box over there and send in some of your knee-jerk thoughts. What are some ways that we can focus on value first and function second? Value first and function second. Shima, I'm going to turn it over to you. I see some responses coming in. Share us some overviews.
Well, it's great because I think that the audience is really kind of getting in tune to their own audience. Beth is talking about, you really need to survey your attendees. Paul's talking about that fact you need to engage your stakeholders and always ask why, focusing in on the content, being able to reach your audience through social media. Roger's talking about being more mindful of how much time people need to be away from the office, really understand their world. So asking goals, objectives first before you begin to think about other logistics like the venue.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for typing in those responses. Really appreciate it. I know some of you are even sharing them on Twitter right now. I've seen some popping up using the hashtag ThinkStrategic. So let's continue on. Let's look at number 3. Oops. Efficiency to effectiveness. Efficiency to effectiveness. So I'm going to ask you another question here because I want your kind of input. Before we talk about it, what's the difference between operational effectiveness and strategic effectiveness? What's the difference between operational effectiveness and strategic effectiveness? I'm going to let you type those in. What do you think? What's the difference between operational effectiveness and strategic effectiveness? So I'm going to, Ashima, I see a couple of responses already come in. I'll let you do an overview and share those with us.
So Roger and Katie really kind of talk about operational as is function. And Adrienne is talking about doing versus planning. And strategic is more operational with a purpose. Rachel's talking about executing plan versus achieving ROI on goals. So those are some of the differences that they're distinguishing. Jane's just talking about perspective. Operational effectiveness seems more logistics-based. Strategic effectiveness seems more long-term items which can be implemented.
Thanks, Shimo, and thanks everybody for typing those in. So let's talk about this a little bit more. Operational efficiencies and strategic effectiveness are two different things. Let me put it to you like this. Improving the registration for a meeting is operational efficiency. And we've never heard anybody say, I'm going back to that meeting because registration ran so smoothly. We've never heard anybody say, well, I'm going to drop $1,500 to $2,000 to go to this 3-day conference, spend for registration, lodging, hotel, or travel, and the expenses because the food was great last year. Those are operational efficiencies. It's strategic effectiveness, adding the value, doing something different than your competitors do. Not doing the same things your competitors do better, but doing something different from what your competitors do that adds more value. So when we start thinking about this, it's really critical to think about how can we focus on strategic effectiveness. Another one, number 4, formulas to outcomes. Formulas to outcomes. This is a critical one that we really need to think about. Focus on the outcomes of the meetings first, and then build the meeting backwards. Plan the meetings after you focus on the outcomes. If we focus on the behaviors that we want attendees to have, if we focus on their ROI, their value, what they're going to take back to their job or their life, and then focus on that and how do we get there, then the formulas have so much more meaning. When we just do the formulas and we're not focusing on the outcome, we forget the real value. So what's also very interesting here is, let's look at the next one here. Series of sessions to community of learning spaces. So often, conferences in particular are nothing but a series of education sessions that have been, I would call it, quilted together from various different aspects in the organization. And we need to shift the focus. We need to transition into how do we create a community of learning spaces. And let's think about this one for a minute. How do we actually create this community of learning spaces? I like to call it the yin and yang of learning spaces. So much of our conferences are built for the extroverts. Our networking receptions, our meal functions, the exhibit hall, the opening reception, the closing party are built for those that are extroverts, those type A people that are really out there. And we really need to start looking at them and thinking, where do we create learning spaces? Because so much conversation is happening in the hallway. How do we create in the pre-convene area areas where there can also be the extroverts, but also in the surrounding areas there can be small pockets of small groups of people feeling safe, getting together, and actually comparing or sharing with one another and talking to one another. How do we do this yin and yang of learning spaces? And how do we connect the education all the way across the board? The trend in conferences right now is to move away from the smorgasbord, all you can eat. I'm going to be something for everybody at my conference, to being really focused and intentional and threading the content together, addressing an issue so that we move the industry forward. So I have one more question for you. Those were the 5. And let's take a look at this. What I'd like for you to do, which of these 5 do you need to work on the most? Which of these 5 do you need to work on the most? And here they are again: details to relationships, function to value, efficiency to effectiveness, formulas to outcomes, series of education sessions to a community of learning spaces. Type in which one you would like to work on the most, and I see some other things that have come in. And also, if you have questions, you can send those in as well. And Shimo, I'm going to let you kind of give us an overview of what's coming in.
Well, there's a number. Some of you are even putting in a couple, efficiency to effectiveness, as well as a series of education sessions to a community of learning spaces. And there's been one comment by Megan who said they have over 900 sessions, but yet they do 5 playgrounds or learning spaces, as she calls it. So thank you for that share, Megan. Well, it looks like we have a lot coming in about efficiency to effectiveness, number 3. And then maybe on a second, we're talking about function to value, which is number 2. But there's comments all over the board, a lot really focusing on the series of education sessions to a community of learning spaces is popular as well. So I think a lot of people are taking away things that they can identify specifically that they could work on.
Yep. And, you know, this is an overview for you to really get you thinking about this and just start you to research more, to dig in a little deeper, and to start thinking for yourself and give you some new lenses and perspectives to think of your job. And I also would say that if you can use these perspectives as a meeting professional, it'll elevate you in your profession. If you can start talking about strategic alignment with your organization's goals, with the meeting with your organization's goals and what the end business outcomes are, you have elevated yourself to a nice little place in that organization, and they're going to start calling on you and asking you, how can we do this? What can we do? So that's really about all I have right here, unless you have some questions coming in for me, and I will turn it back over to Terry and Shimo.
You know, Jeff, I think that it's so important to always look at our thinking, right? We get really, you know, our instinct is to work from, you know, what do we need to do today? And you're so right. You know, we plan these meetings for strategic thinking once a year, twice a year, and then we don't think about them till the next time that we go back to regroup. And I think you brought up some great perspectives. And Mike, so now there's this planner sitting there maybe going, hey, Jeff's right. You know, there are some things that I really should think about doing differently. And where do I start? What's a resource? And I think that, as again I said earlier, planners have been asked to be more strategic, that destination experts have really stepped up to be able to you know, provide that kind of consultative advice. And I want to kind of get your thought process, Mike. I was kind of thinking, wow, if a planner took the time to really review those goals, right, with a destination expert, what an opportunity they would have to be connected with the right people, the right spaces, and certainly the opportunities to do something different in almost every destination.
Right. Thanks, Terry. The good thing about this is that we are experiencing and seeing a big uptick, and a lot of planners that actually are taking the time on being able to share that information with us on the front end. We always encourage it and want it more and more. And when the information then circles around what these tips that Jeff was talking about with values and goals and effectiveness, and if those are on the front end of the conversation, it just starts the whole planning process off when engaging the Bureau within the destination to lead for success. And we're hearing it more and more from the meeting planners that they want the meeting to be memorable. And Jeff touched on that right in the beginning of the webinar, that the meeting does need to be memorable. And that's where we can come in and engage and use our resources here with our partners and with all different areas within the destination to be able to enhance that. Planners are constantly saying that we need you as a destination to be able to carry out our brand all the way through the meeting from beginning to end. So that's really the conversations that we're having in our meetings with our customers that are key on what can we do to bring more value and make it a memorable meeting and be a consultant to these planners in a wide variety of ways that we offer here through a bureau.
Yeah, and for those planners, Mike, that might not understand, or maybe there's some with us today that haven't really worked with a convention and visitors bureau or a destination marketing organization. I just would like for you to, reiterate how you can access those services and how those services are paid for, and even the types of meetings, because I so often hear planners say, well, I know CVBs will help me if I need multiple hotels, or if I have a citywide and need convention center space, but maybe you could just clarify a little more with regard to that.
Absolutely. And we always like to stress to use a convention bureau at the very beginning stage, that you can start the process when you're looking at a city, and it can certainly help save you time on going through the process. We're a free service. There's pretty much a convention bureau that's in every destination. They are made up by either members or hotel tax, so every bureau is a free service to any meeting planner or any individual that is looking to do an event or do a meeting within the city. And we help anybody from 10 rooms to thousands of rooms. So it's not just big business. It's not just multiple hotel users. We are there, and we have teams designed and set up for small meetings, medium size, as well as very large conventions. And that's pretty much the same setup through every convention bureau from destination to destination. That if you think about utilizing the bureau to find perhaps those independent hotels that you may not be aware of, as well as keeping your partnership with your national sales offices through major hotel chains, we partner and work with those national sales offices as well. It's where we can become a resource to you and in a consultative way of putting you in touch with examples that we use. For a large piece of business that just booked Chicago, I'll use as an example. We have an organization here in Chicago called World Business Chicago, and the organization is set up to actually bring business and headquarter organizations here. They're a tremendous resource for us, and we partner with them as we go out and we look at, say, a tech company that's looking at Chicago. We have a brand new facility called 1871 that is a huge tech center, and we will find out which companies within the city of Chicago that would relate to this meeting and utilize and either pull in either a CEO or someone within that organization that would be beneficial to that organization as to why Chicago would be the right fit, or going to a university and pulling out speakers, or to hospitals and working with medical associations. So we really are very fortunate to have this big base of headquarter companies here in Chicago, but many, many cities have built these ambassador programs that it's not just your convention bureau that is doing it. We're the starting point, but we have the fingers going out to many, many different resources throughout the city that can certainly help you accomplish your goals and make something memorable that you may not have thought of. And again, it's a free service to you.
Mike, I think you really succinctly put that together. And I can't tell you how often I'm asked, and I think to myself, wow, if I was going into a city, I would never want to go it alone. And there are really some great resources, some great consultative resources, and that can help you with the kinds of things that Jeff pointed out. And we really do need to turn the lens around to, what are we trying to achieve? It is about the people we're bringing in, and it really is about cultivating the right spaces and ultimately adding value by bringing something really different to a face-to-face meeting experience. So thank you both. And if you are looking to find some fine folks like Mike and his team or any destination, we encourage you to visit us at empowerMINT.com, where you can connect with a destination expert and compare destination to destination in one web portal. And if you are going to be in DC next week, we and many of our destination partners will be meeting us there for Destination Showcase, and we'd love to see you in person as well. Many of you, I know, are working on your CMP certification, and so you will receive from us a recording of this webinar today that we hope you'll pass on to maybe a peer or a fellow planner, and your certificate for your learning today. So you should see that within 5 business days via email. Please check your spam folder because we'll be sending it out, and sometimes I know it does get lost in that area.